What up? It's your boy, the Incredible Man. Yes, I'm back at it again. And this is Dr. Stone, episode 20 discussion slash review, man. Dude, it was good. It was really, really good. And a little sad at the same time because, like, each episode we're getting now is gonna, like, we're coming to the end. But I admit, I really enjoyed this episode. And at the beginning of this episode, they answered a lot of the questions that me and someone I was talking to, shout out to MC Zitterer, if I said that right. I feel like I might have butchered it, but we were having a long discussion about the whole plot of this whole little miniature arc that's coming up right here, and they pretty much answered for me what we were talking about and what was going on, and that was the whole thing with Tsukasa and Senku and about Taiju and Yurihisa and about their whole thing. So yeah, it answered a lot of the questions that I had previously from the episode 19, and they answered the fact, which is that Tsukasa doesn't really trust Taiju and Yurihisa, but like I mentioned in last week's episode, the people that he does trust and they have a little power and influence in his little dominion, they all have fur around them or somewhere on their body. And Taiju and Yuzuriya both have fur, but it's stated this episode that he doesn't trust them completely because now that Senku's alive, he felt like they're spies. And knowing that they're spies, he has Helga watching them, and they're going to give them a little leeway to continue to do what they were doing, but they're going to be like on a short leash, but not too much, so he won't give away that Senku's alive. But we already know that they know that Senku's alive. But what's so funny is because that was one of the main things I had about episode 19, and they came and stated that this episode, and he's going to use them as hostages. And the funny thing is, when we jump back and see Senku talking about Taiju and Yurihisa and Tsukasa, he stated the same thing that Tsukasa said about using them as hostages, which is a good thing. And I really love the fact that they're both thinking the same way about Taiju and Yurihisa, and that was such a nice thing. And like MC Zero, I have a problem with Tsukasa. He's just one of those. He's the only thing about this story that I'm not really enjoying, but I give him credit because this episode, he really stepped up to me, like him questioning everything and him not fully trusting Taiju and Yurihisa, and Senku mentioning the fact that Tsukasa is probably going to use them as hostages, which was very nice, and that's what me and MC Zitterer were talking about the whole time in our little conversations about that particular part, and I like that they answered that this episode. That was very good. So then we get into the episode, and you guys know that we're on the road to make the cell phones. Then we find out that while we're making it and everything that's going on, we got to get the ingredients and everything together. Homura is watching the village, and that's another part about this episode that I really enjoyed, is that Homura's watching the village, and Senku knew this, and Gen knew this. Nobody else knew this, but Senku and Gen knew, and in that whole little thing of that, Senku was like, well, what kind of person is she, Gen? And Gen goes into talking about her, she's pretty much indebted to Hyoga and Tsukasa, and, she trusts anything Hyoga says. And that's cool, and I like that because, you don't gotta betray everybody sometimes to make a character a wonderful character. Her sticking up and believing in what she believes in and following Hyoga makes her a good character. And Senku was like, well, I wonder what kind of person is she really? And Gen was like, well, we know she's not going to betray Hyoga. So that was very nice. Okay, now, I just want to get that out of the way because once we dive into the episode, I'm going to be going. So we get into the episode and we see Senku asking Gen what does he think about Tsukasa and everything that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and then we see Gen transform into Tsukasa, and it was like it was nice because like he transformed fully. I mean, he still looked like himself, but his hair grew out and it changed colors, and he was talking like Tsukasa, and everything that he stated is what Tsukasa said prior to the episode actually coming on, and that was very nice. So that's huge credit to Gen, man. I mean, we knew he was smart in The Mentalist, but that proves that like he's so much better than I gave him credit for. I mean, we knew all of his exploits and everything that he's done so far, but him guessing spot on what Tsukasa was going to say was really good to me. That was really, really good. So then this episode, we started to make some of the stuff that we needed to make the cell phones, and Senku explained how sound travels in a cell phone and through the devices and everything, which was very nice in case you didn't know. So, and they didn't know. Like, they didn't know at all. But then he says that we got to make a cotton candy machine. And it was funny this episode because every time Senku would say something super smart and explain how sound travels through cell phones and everything, and they were looking lost. And Chrome mentioned that he knows a little bit of it. He understood a little bit. And everybody else was like, I don't. And Gen was like, wow, this conversation is high IQ. And then he was like, we need to make a cotton candy machine. And then he was like, well, that dropped this thing about 100 points in IQ status. So that was nice to see like the comedy still come through, because this episode was it wasn't serious, but like it was very informative about what we needed and the stuff that we were making. We saw the villagers come together this episode and really help Senku when they were making the gold wire and everything. So there was a lot of communication with the villagers, and I really enjoyed that part. But then we see that they got to make the cotton candy machine, and Senku was like, well, the perfect thing to do would be to make actually cotton candy and not start with the gold thread, because we don't need any impurities when we're mixing up the gold thread. It needs to be straight and perfect and pure. So they use cotton candy, and the whole time while they're making the cotton candy, all of the villagers start tasting it. And I was like, oh wow, this is good. They've never had candy, so this was nice. And it was a couple nice shots showing them eating the candy and everything. And one scene that I found absolutely wonderful, man, and that was when they had Gentaro, oh man, I messed up dude's name. Genro coming to Senku and Gen talking to them, and he was like, how's this cotton candy? And it was like, enough! You guys had me making a meme! And it was funny because then Gen mentioned something that I loved, and that was, you guys know what a meme is? Like, what is in these 100 tales? And that shoots back to Senku's father, Byakuya, and all of the 100 tales. And I think I'm really going to start reading that manga to understand everything that happened prior in the village. And then we dive into the fact of them making the cotton candy and everything, and Senku then asking Gen about Homura, and no one in the village knew that she was watching them except for Gen and Senku. And then we have Genro was like, she's watching us? And then they go into this whole thing about, what kind of ladies do Senku like? So, and that wasn't his motivation at all behind it. And then he tells them that she's watching the village because they're going to, if we make any kind of big move, she's going to report back to Tsukasa and Hyoga. And that was nice for them to mention that. And then all of a sudden they start making after they've made the cotton candy and everything, and he takes her cotton candy. He gives her cotton candy and he tells her it's not poisonous and everything. And of course, she's suspicious about it. She doesn't want to bite into it or taste it or anything. And eventually she does taste it, and we see her in a tree tasting it. And dude, that is so wonderful. Now, I don't see her switching sides, but I do kind of probably see her in the long run. Well, I don't want to attack them anymore. I'm not betraying you, but I don't want to attack them anymore either. So I could see her being that kind of character if that's what they're going for in this whole thing. But then we have Senku and everyone, and they're making everything, and then they get it together, and they finally start making a gold thread, and Senku tells them that it needs to be like from here to the mountaintop, how long I need it to be, and twisties and everything to make the coil for the wires and everything for the cell phone. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the video, but what was very nice was how Tsukasa had Hyoga send have Homura stay there to watch the village, and he was like, well, we're going to be late with information gathering as well because we don't have any kind of way to communicate. That is so good because Senku's making a cell phone to communicate with Taiju to undermine Tsukasa, but Tsukasa doesn't have any kind of way to have his communication reach him faster at a more aptitude time. That's what I wanted to. That was very good. That was very good. But then we have Chrome on the other hand, which was one of the highlights of this episode to me. We have Chrome dive in and think of something on his own, and he's been working on it for 3 days straight. And what he made was a hydro power plant. Well, he made the water wheel, and Senku brought over the generator and everything else, and they made a hydro power plant to shoot out electricity. Dude, that was the highlight of this episode, and that was absolutely beast. And I want to give a huge shout out to Chrome for coming up with this on his own, and that's something I love about Dr. Stone. Like, we know we have Senku with the genius level intellect, and he's the smart go-to guy if you really want to figure out anything. But for Chrome to make that on his own, just remembering what Senku done with the magnet in the water and the leaf, and seeing the generator and them with the oh, you guys know what I'm talking about. The thing they made this episode with Kohaku's shield and everything. My mind's drawing a blank. But anyway, with him just seeing that and realizing, well, I can make something like this, and he made the water wheel, was absolutely fantastic for him to make that on his own. And Senku was ecstatic. He didn't show it on his face because he was just trying to wrap his mind around it, because he was just so amazed that Chrome could make that on his own. Well, he made it with the old guy, but for him to come up with the idea on his own, and then they made it, and they made the hydro power plant. So dude, stuff is getting way better than, like, after last week's episode, I was a little skeptical about how they were going to do it, and then I found out that this time they have a couple months, because nobody's attacking during the winter months. They're gonna launch the full attack, both of them, in spring. But for Chrome to make that on his own, man. So I'm definitely thinking the Village of Science is going to definitely have the upper hand, because now they don't have to use manpower anymore. They have the hydro plant. Fantastic, man. I love this episode. This is your boy, Dick Incredible. Don't forget to smash the like button till you can't smash it anymore. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them. And subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. And remember that anime matters, anime is greatness, and anime is life, man. Peace out.